There's something terrifying happening right now. Not just to the planet, but to the human mind. People are waking up every morning, reaching for their phones and drowning in an endless flood of doom scrolling. We are seeing wildfires, floods and political collapse. Corporate greed keeps eating at the last green things on Earth. And somewhere in the middle of all that horrifying noise, a deeply uncomfortable question starts whispering. Is there actually any point? Most systems don't answer that question honestly. They either pretend the crisis isn't real, or they spiral into something so darkly nihilistic that people feel worse after engaging with it. But there's a stunning, radical, almost miraculous movement that's been quietly growing in the corners of art studios, community gardens and university lecture halls, and it doesn't just answer that question, it obliterates it. It's called Solarpunk. The world is burning and the people with this philosophy have a plan. By the end of this video, the way you look at your city, your community and even your morning routine will never quite be the same. Part 1. Optimism as an act of rebellion. Here's what nobody talks about. Hope is not passive. In a world that profits from despair, where outrage keeps people scrolling, where anxiety keeps them consuming, where helplessness keeps them compliant, choosing to believe in a beautiful future is one of the most rebellious things a person can do. The philosopher Albert Camus once wrote that the most important philosophical question is whether life is worth living. Most people skim past that line because it's uncomfortable, but Solarpunk sits with it. It stares that question right in the face and says, not only is life worth living, but the future is worth building. That's the extraordinary heart of Solarpunk. At its core, it's a literary, visual and social movement that imagines a future where technology, nature and community exist in sustainable, breathtaking balance. It's not a fantasy, it's not naive. It's a detailed, deeply vetted blueprint for what civilization could look like if humanity got serious about its own optimistic survival. Part 2, a problem nobody wants to say out loud. Before diving into what Solarpunk is, it's worth sitting with what it's responding to because context is everything. The stunning truth is that most people already know the world is broken. A 2021 global survey by Bath University found that 68% of young people between 16 and 25 felt the future was frightening. Not uncertain, not complicated, but frightening. An entire generation has grown up normalizing catastrophe. And the philosophical traditions that were supposed to give people meaning, many weren't built for this moment. Ancient Stoicism tells people to accept what they cannot control. But what happens when the thing that needs changing is the entire civilizational structure? Nihilism says nothing means anything, which sounds profound until someone's standing in floodwater up to their knees. The German philosopher Martin Heidegger had a concept he called thrownness. It is the idea that we are simply thrown into existence in a time and place we did not choose. We didn't choose to be born into a world hurtling toward a climate crisis. We didn't choose to inherit a political landscape that feels like a dumpster fire. We just woke up here one day, were handed the keys to a burning house and were told, good luck. This is where Solarpunk enters the story, and not as a feel-good distraction, but as a functional response. As Viktor Frankl popularized, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Part 3, what Solarpunk actually is. Envision yourself standing on a rooftop in the year 2050. Solar panels gleam like stained glass in the afternoon sun. Vines and vegetable gardens cascade down the side of the building next to you. Below, a high-speed rail line hums past a restored wetland that used to be a parking lot. Children are tending a community garden in the plaza. A makerspace on the ground floor is full of people repairing their electronics instead of throwing them away. There's music somewhere, there's laughter. This wondrous, specific, sun-drenched image is Solarpunk. It's the kind of optimism that Jean-Paul Sartre hinted at when he said, freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. While cyberpunk warns humanity about a high-tech, dismal life dystopia, think neon-soaked cities where corporations own everything and ordinary people are just meat for the machine. Solarpunk is its rebellious, optimistic, fiery cousin. Where cyberpunk is dark, rainy and nihilistic, Solarpunk is bright, airy and proactively utopian. Where cyberpunk technology is oppressive and invasive, Solarpunk technology is liberating, open source and woven gently into the natural world. The punk in Solarpunk isn't decoration, it's a declaration of war. The war is against consumerism, against fossil fuel dependency, against the appalling idea that the only future available is a corporate one. Part 4, the 4 pillars of Solarpunk philosophy. The first pillar is radical optimism, and let's be honest, at first glance that sounds almost naive. Someone might reasonably object, sure, optimism sounds nice, but isn't that just ignoring the problem? That's a fair challenge, but Solarpunk doesn't pretend the climate crisis isn't real. It acknowledges the dreadful weight of it fully. The difference is that it refuses to stop there. Rebecca Solnit, the brilliant writer and activist, put it beautifully when she said that hope is not a guarantee, it's a direction. Solarpunk chooses that direction loudly and on purpose. The second pillar is high-tech sustainability. Technology meets ecology. And this one tends to genuinely shock people who assume environmentalism means going backward. Solarpunk doesn't want to drag humanity back to the Stone Age. It envisions sophisticated, incredible technology, modular solar cells, vertical farms feeding entire city blocks, high-speed maglev rail networks connecting communities without an ounce of fossil fuel. The third pillar is localization and DIY culture. This is where the philosophy gets deeply personal. Solarpunk echoes Aristotle's idea that humans are political animals, creatures meant to live in community, not isolation. Solarpunk emphasizes human networks, including community gardens, maker spaces where broken gadgets get repaired instead of landfilled, and decentralized power networks where communities own their own renewable energy. The philosopher Ivan Illich called this convivial tools, which means technology that empowers the person using it, rather than making them dependent on a distant, faceless system. The fourth pillar is its breathtaking aesthetic. Visually, Solarpunk is an astonishing blend of Art Nouveau's organic curves and futuristic engineering. This includes skyscrapers wrapped in hanging gardens, stained glass catching the afternoon light, and architecture that looks alive because it is alive. It matters that Solarpunk is beautiful because beauty has always been a form of argument. When someone can see what a hopeful future looks like, it stops being abstract. It becomes something worth fighting for. Part 5. Philosophical roots run deep. This is where we need to address the punk part, because the punk in Solarpunk is doing a lot of heavy lifting. In the 1970s, punk music was a raw, angry middle finger to the establishment. It was about DIY culture, about rejecting the corporate machine, and about making something real in a world that felt fake. What makes Solarpunk more than just pretty pictures is the profound intellectual tradition underneath it. The German philosopher Ernst Bloch spent his life writing about the principle of hope, which is the idea that utopian thinking isn't escapism, but a fundamental human cognitive tool for transformation. We cannot build what we cannot first imagine. Solarpunk is that principle applied in full colour to the climate crisis. The French philosopher Albert Camus wrote about the myth of Sisyphus, the guy condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down. Camus said we have to imagine Sisyphus happy. We have to see that the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. It acknowledges the struggle, the boulder of climate change, of political corruption, of social injustice is real and heavy, but it refuses to accept that the struggle is meaningless. Buckminster Fuller, the brilliant, almost bewildering designer and systems thinker, said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." That sentence is Solarpunk. It's not about destroying the old world in rage. It's about building the new one so compellingly, so livably, that the old one simply becomes irrelevant. Part 6. Why this is relevant right now. Here's where this gets personal. Solarpunk isn't just a philosophy for architects or sci-fi writers or environmental activists. It's a philosophy for anyone who's ever felt the slow, burning anxiety of living in a world that seems to be accelerating towards something terrible, while being told there's nothing they can do about it. That feeling of being powerless, it has a name in psychology: learned helplessness. Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, demonstrated that when people repeatedly experience situations where their actions seem to have no effect, they stop trying, even when effective action becomes available. Doomscrolling creates learned helplessness, which deepens despair, which creates more doomscrolling. It's a ghastly, self-reinforcing loop. Solarpunk breaks the loop, not by being falsely cheerful, but by offering something more powerful than either despair or denial. A beautiful, specific, actionable vision of what doing better actually looks like. Philosopher Baruch Spinoza suggested that all things excellent are as difficult as they are rare. Just because a goal is difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. You as an individual cannot stop a coal plant in China. That is not up to you. You as an individual cannot pass a Green New Deal tomorrow. That is not up to you. But you can fix your bike instead of buying a new one. You can plant a windowsill herb garden. You can support a local farmer's market. You can learn to sew. You can get to know your neighbours. Solarpunk understands something profound. Large realities begin small. Part 7. The future is being built right now. The Solarpunk fight doesn't start with a protest march or a political campaign. It starts in your mind. It starts with you refusing to accept the nightmare the powers that be keep selling you. The secret they don't want you to know is that despair is a product. A distracted, hopeless population is a consuming population. They scroll, they buy, they numb out, and they die. But a hopeful population, a community-minded, DIY, resilient population, that is a dangerous population. Because once you realise you can grow your own food and generate your own power and fix your own goods, you realise you don't need the system the way they told you that you did. Here is the remarkable, somewhat startling truth that Solarpunk offers as its final gift. The transition is already slowly emerging. Community solar projects are growing across Europe and North America. Urban farming is a billion-dollar industry that barely existed 20 years ago. The maker movement has evolved into a global phenomenon. Young people are redesigning cities, growing food on rooftops, and creating art that focuses on a more hopeful world. Solarpunk says, come build, come imagine, and come tinker towards something wonderful. It's about finding ways to make life more wonderful now and for the generations that follow, by transforming our relationship with the planet. This is not just philosophy, this is a way of living the terror of this moment in time seriously enough to answer it with something real, something beautiful, something stubbornly, rebelliously and magnificently alive.